A question that I've often asked in terms of how I make decisions is how do I maintain a neutral ground with the decisions that I make? This is often very difficult because in life we are subject to many pressures, whether they are societal or psychological and internal. And it can be very frustrating to our will and to what we would like to see happen and what we would like to accomplish. I'll make an analogy with the difficulty of finding neutral ground by talking about the president-elect of 2016 in America. Now, there are a lot of problems with the president-elect of 2016 dealing with bigotry for one thing, and dangerous bigotry at that. And it's going to affect a lot of people, and it's going to marginalize a lot of people, and that is a lot to be afraid of. But it seems to me that the way that we talk about it is just as important as how we deal with it. And what's happening is people that meanwhile are being siphoned off to the edges because they are pacifists, so to speak, and because they seek to look at all of the sides of the issue and not jump the gun, so to speak. And so it's not so much that they are opposed to all of the things that seem to be happening politically, it's just that they want to make sure that they're making the right decision. Now, I want to be clear, the president-elect will most likely impact me due to the type of person that I am. The president-elect has been described as being an ableist, and with that being the case, my mental illness will be a target, and I'm afraid. But that's why I seek neutrality, and that's why I seek neutral ground. Now, how am I defining neutrality? Well, very briefly, though it is definitely a lot of things, neutrality is the attempt to look at all of our sources and all of our sources of knowledge objectively and as 100% accurately as possible without biases, whether cognitive or logical, and being as accurate as we can with how we perceive those sources and how we process those sources. Neutrality is important, and it's a philosophical position that's often taken to balance our worldview. So we look at all of the knowledge that is available, all of the data that is available, when we make decisions based off that. But this is very hard. And I know this for a reason that may come as a surprise, because we don't necessarily look at mental illness this way, but my mental illness does push me to extremes. So when I'm doing well, but then all of a sudden I'm triggered and then I'm talking about how I want to take a gun to my head and shoot myself right in front of family members, I think this shows the way in which I can be extreme. And I bring that up as an analogy, right? Because I think it's an important analogy to how extreme I can be in my ideologies and in my thoughts. And that's why I seek neutrality and neutral ground. I seek neutrality and neutral ground because I don't think it helpful to talk like that. There may be instances where it could be beneficial because it's an expression of emotion. But generally, I think too much emotion, especially that's clouded by our perspectives and by our biases, can prevent us from engaging in intelligent and effective discourse. So I will be honest, I seek neutrality because I know how extreme my mind can take things. And I didn't mention that example so that way I would be stigmatized, but so that way I would bring more awareness to what I go with or what I deal with and what I go through, and why it's extremely important to me that I remain as rational and logical as I can. This doesn't mean, of course, that emotion doesn't have a place. In fact, I would say that emotion isn't necessarily non-neutral. I would just say that there's a place for how we think about the issues that are given to us and how we process the information. And I think that is one thing that is most important with thinking through these things. This is a talk on neutrality because I want to show that actions must perceive knowledge in a way that is beneficial, in a way that will minimize harm. And I mention this because it's very difficult for me to reconcile my kind of pacifism and neutrality with my Sartrean existentialism, but I would say that those go hand in hand in the sense that Sartrean existentialism implies that we do make intense decisions, but we make them with the knowledge that's available. That's my addition, and we make it by gaining knowledge. So in other words, it is important that we act, and action is very important, but that doesn't mean we dispense of the knowledge that's available at any given moment. and the knowledge that we use. Basically, what I'm seeing happen politically is I'm seeing a lot of instability, and it's definitely very scary, but I maintain or seek to maintain and strive for neutrality because I think that in order to be stable with our conscience and to be stable with our actions, we have to have some kind of neutral ground. And I think that's extremely important. And I also bring this up because I know that I could definitely be extreme if I wanted to, because that's how my mental illness works. It chooses extremes and it sticks with them. But that would lead to a lot of dangerous decisions, or I should say harmful decisions, not necessarily for other people, but certainly for me. And I think that one thing that people take for granted is when we're looking at things that are very controversial, I think what we take for granted is that our positions, whether political or philosophical or whatever, if they don't take into account the interests that other people have, they can cause a lot of harm. And that's what I've become aware of whenever I think about how my mental illness works and how it operates within my mind and within my life. This is Phoenix, and I hope you enjoyed this talk. Thanks.